Next in the tank is an entrepreneur with a mission to redefine luxury.
Hola, tiburones. Me llamo Sandra Velasquez, and I am here seeking $300,000 for 5% equity in my company. I took the most Mexican plant ever, the nopal, and created Nopalera, Mexican botanicals for bath and body.
I need you to give super claps right now for super entrepreneur Sandra Velasquez. Woo! How we doing, Sandra?
I'm doing good. Good to see you in real life.
Yeah, well, mostly real life. Someday in real life, maybe in person someday. But today is we do the best we can, and here we are, getting to celebrate your personal victory on Shark Tank, which I think is really powerful, and we will get into that. But first, let's roll back the clock a little bit and talk about your relationship with Shark Tank. Were you an avid watcher of the show, or how? Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I have been watching the show for a long time. But it's everyone knows Shark Tank, like everyone knows American Idol. So I actually was not planning on applying, but a friend of mine was like, "Oh, you should apply to Shark Tank." And I was like, "What?" It didn't even really occur to me. Because I was just so busy. Last year was so crazy for me. And I was like, "All right, let me just go ahead and do it." I applied online. I had no contacts there. You just fill out a very simple form, if I can remember. I think it was pretty simple. And then I don't know how much longer, but I got like a call or an email or a text or something. And then that kind of kicked off the process, which is very long, by the way. I don't know if people realize like how long the process is from when you apply to when you actually film to when it actually airs. This is not a short thing. So, yeah.
Well, I think that's hilarious that you didn't think of yourself as an I don't want to say opportunist, but as your business as an opportunity to go onto Shark Tank. Like, so dive into that a little bit. Why? What made you think that it wasn't good enough, or enough of a business, or the right kind of business, or whatever the blockage was to you?
Yeah, I think that I was so overwhelmed last year. I was in 4 accelerators. I was,
Oh, wow.
we were a team of 2. I was wearing like 17 hats. And so it just seemed like a far reach, like, wow, to apply to be on the TV show and then do all that whole thing. Like, when am I going to have time for that? So it was more just that it felt like a very far reaching thing. And then, I finally I was like, well, what have I got to lose? Let me just go ahead and, throw my hat in the ring kind of thing. And still, like, I was just so busy throughout that process of preparation. But sometimes that's just how life is. It's like everything happens at the same time, and you just have to move with the momentum. There's never going to be a good time. You never have extra time, for these kinds of big events. You just make it happen,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of things in life that are like that, both business and personal. And yeah, I think, but it's almost kind of, like you said, the process. Yeah, the application is short, but the process of going through Shark Tank is such a gauntlet of things that you need to address for them, and about your business, and even like within yourself, like to address. And I think that I could see where a lot of people would look at that and say, yeah, I don't know if it's really the right time for that, but I've also seen the other side, where we've had entrepreneurs come on and said, even though Shark Tank might not have worked out the way I wanted it to, it helped me get better at my business. It helped me dig into numbers and metrics that I didn't either realize existed or realize were as bad as they are, and how much better they could be, and how much easier everything would be if I had those figured out.
100%. So at the same time as I was preparing for Shark Tank, like once I was confirmed that they wanted to move forward, and first of all, nothing is confirmed, like even until like the minute you air. So you can prepare, you can go through that whole month's process, you can film your episode, and you know this, right? Because you're a fan of the show. Not every episode that films airs. Can you imagine going through all of that process of months of preparation, all of that, and then like no one knows it ever happened, you know? And so I was at the same time, towards closer to the end, getting closer to the film date is when I actually was also starting to fundraise. So those numbers that you're talking about, Joe, it was like I was already having to get all that stuff together anyway, because absolutely applying for Shark Tank, they need all your financials, all of your corporate documents, all of your intellectual property, all of these things that you need to give to investors anyway. So I was already preparing that at the same time. So that's how it ended up working out. I was like, I'm doing this anyway. You know what I mean? But when I first applied, I was not fundraising. I was a very different time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean that. Yeah, so I mean, it's funny how things change so quickly, and then how much you can apply that to other aspects, not just of the business, but in your case, like, okay, we're going to be raising. So, like, I do know a lot of these numbers. I do have things in place, and I think also maybe like the mindset of being able to take on an investor as well. Because it's not just like, oh, Shark Tank or bust. It's no, like the business has to keep, thriving and surviving through that process, but also after that process, regardless of how it turns out.
Correct.
And if it even airs. I mean, we saw season 12 saw an episode that was filmed in season 11, and the only reason it was so painfully obvious was because all the sharks were next to each other, and they had to put a thing in front, like, hey, the illness this was shot well before the illness was ever a thing. It makes me wonder, like, how many other episodes are like that in the series that are shot out of season, that we just never really recognized because the show hasn't changed that much, except for with the illness and
with the
moving
distance,
everybody away. But yeah, okay. So talk about how once you started to figure out that the process was going to happen for Shark Tank, or you were moving through the pipeline. How did you balance that with your growing business and life at the same time?
I mean, I just think there's no easy answer to this. There's no free time when you are a startup, when you are wearing 17 hats. I mean, thankfully at that point when I had applied and was moving through the pipeline, I had already transitioned manufacturing to a co-packer, because for the first year of business, I was making the products myself. So I spent like year one in hospital scrubs covered in oils because I was making the soap myself. And so at least I had that off my plate, but there was still so much other stuff, like operational stuff and just day-to-day stuff. And then I was in like, 5 million accelerators, like I mentioned. So I was just booked back to back. It was like just every day was just like, I was sitting at my desk on Zoom, and then I would go collapse at night. And so much so, Joe, that like, I actually like started to get like lose circulation in my feet because I was sitting at my desk so much during the day that I was like, why are my feet are starting to tingle? And that's how you're sitting too long, And so that's how it was last year. It was just bananas, So I don't know what the answer is of how I balanced it. I just somehow did it.
Well, I know they say that like the whole standing desk thing is kind of like a farce. But if you're in your case, it's not,
No.
Being able to stand up is a luxury, right? And being able to move around. And that's why one of the things I love about the Apple Watch is it tells you every hour, like, hey, dummy, stand up,
Get up.
go walk
Yeah.
around, for a minute. And yeah, I mean you don't want that, because the other thing is like that's where like blood clots happen, right? The one thing that always scared me to death is there's a story of the guy on the plane that was doing like some 20-hour flight or something like that, and he went to get up after the flight and boom, dead, because the blood clot released from his leg went straight up to his brain and killed him.
It's no joke.
Heart, or maybe heart or brain.
Probably his heart. I mean, it's no joke. And I mean, it was the kind of thing where at the end of the day, I would have like plates on my desk from like, breakfast, lunch, like they would just accumulate because I was eating at my desk while working, between meetings or sometimes during meetings. And, I'm glad that era is over.
Can it? Well, let's talk a little bit about that as well, because I think that new entrepreneurs don't necessarily see the value sometimes in having an MVP, a minimum viable product, and that MVP usually it's probably going to be manufactured by you, the entrepreneur, the super entrepreneur, in some way, shape, or form, and so I would love for you to speak on the importance that what that enabled you to be able to do by taking that on head on by making them yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I was a beauty industry outsider, Joe. So I literally was like, how do I get products made? How do I find ingredients? Like, how do I find anything? And so me making my products for the first year was not because I wanted to be crafty, was because I literally didn't know how else to get them made. And it took me an entire year, my first year of business, to actually find manufacturing partners that would make my formulas. Because what I did do is that I spent a year, like before I launched, studying formulation. I went to formulation school, I got a certificate, and I worked on the brand, meaning not just the logo, but like the brand. What is this? What is the mission? What are our values? Who is our customer? Why does this need to exist? Why does it need to exist now? So that's actually what I did right, is that I spent a lot of time on the foundation so that when I did launch, when I turned the website on, like the orders came. I built the email list before I launched, but I was still stuck being a manufacturer. And so there was that. So I think that, the MVP, like making sure that you have, people call it product market fit, who's your target market, all of that, these kind of like business buzzwords that don't really mean anything to anybody who's not in business. Really, it's just like being like answering those hard questions up front, because a lot of founders, and I've seen this too, because I used to work in CPG and I used to, teach a class for CPG founders about like distribution. A lot of founders create a brand and a product out of passion, like they like it. And then they try to figure out, like, how do I get people to like it too? How do I find out how to get into stores, right? Because they didn't work backwards. And so I really began with the end in mind. And that's why, we've had like the traction and the success that we've had.
Yeah, well, having that background, I mean, any background in business helps, but having a background that in anything that's consumer and related, really, can push that needle, move the needle for you a lot faster. How, speaking to, being in the accelerators and all that, and adding Shark Tank, like at that point you were already at a co-packer, right? When you were,
yes.
but prior to that, balancing the amount of time between trying to make the sale, trying to make the product, trying to be in your accelerators and be present for those things that I'm sure you didn't get for free, get them for free. At least probably not all of them. And trying to like manipulate time, warp time and space to fit, what was needed at the time for you.
Mm-hmm. It's about systems. It's about systems. And that sounds so boring. Like no one wants to talk about operations. No one wants to talk about systems. But let me tell you. Okay, good. Okay. Okay. So we could talk about it all day, because you need systems, you need SOPs, right? I hate writing SOPs. It's like the bane of my existence, but I forced myself to sit down and write them all out, because I knew that eventually someone else would have to do whatever it is that I was doing. And you need to literally be able to just hand it to someone and be like, here are the directions, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And then just creating the systems on the back end, making sure that systems are talking to each other, automating things, eliminating things, right? So it's always like automate, it's like delegate, automate, eliminate, and so that's something that you're always doing. I'm still always trying to be like, can I eliminate something here? Can I delete something? Does this meeting really have to happen? Like, can this be an email? So I think that systems are what ultimately, if you don't have them in place, you're going to feel them when you don't, and you can't really scale without them,
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm a business operations strategist, but so for me, that's all I like. I love, eat, breathe. Like, how can we make it more efficient? How can we do, create more opportunity to make magic for our customers, for our team, through the processes, by making it easier rather than just like, yeah, well, this is the way we just always did it. Cause like, that's the way it is. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
Let's start back at brick one, and then hey, we can get rid of this and get rid of that, and
Yeah.
kind of combine these two. And technology came into play since this was created, so now we can manipulate this and work with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So going into the tank, let's talk about how you came up with your 300,000 for 5% valuation before we get into how you were feeling walking down the hall.
Yeah, valuation is such a tricky thing. And luckily, like I said, I was also starting to fundraise at the same time. So I was having to, I was talking to like third-party sources who help brands do valuations based off of their, traction and their forecasting. And, people would always tell me, one of the accelerators I was in, it was more like a mentorship cohort. It was with True Beauty Ventures, which are VCs, and their whole thing is like to prepare you for funding. And what I would always ask, like, how do you know what your valuation is when you are a year old, or a year and a half old? And people would always say like the market, it's determined by the market. And I'm like, but what does that mean? Like, who is the market? Someone is ultimately deciding this is valued at this. And what I realized, or what I learned ultimately, is that it's literally no different than like, why is a Picasso worth what it's worth? Who decided that it's worth a lot of money? The person who spent the money, that's who. And so it's the same with business, especially when you're a young business. It's all about like, what is the traction, even if it's like only a year behind you? And then what is the future opportunity? What is the market size? And all of those things are taken into account. And then the person writing you the check is going to be the one that says, hey, Joe, your business is worth, $20 million or $10 million or whatever it is. And you can always counter that, but you need to have something to support why you believe that it is what it is. So that's just kind of where I was at that moment when I came up with it, when it was time to decide, because again, when what you saw being aired, like I actually filmed many months before that, so that's where it was at that time. And that's what I felt comfortable, going in with. It later went up because I ended up raising, $2.7 million at a higher valuation.
That's awesome. I think that's your key there is it's worth whatever somebody's willing to actually pay, not just what they're like, oh, well, this is what it would be if I was going to give you. That's one of the reasons why I get this comment every once in a while, like, Joe, I wish you would say, if you would invest in the company or whatever, or how much. And I kind of dance around it. Sometimes I'll whether I think it's a fair valuation or not, but a definitive answer is really tough because that means that I feel that I can definitely add value to it, right? And that I definitely feel passionate about it, that I would want to be involved in it. And now I can say, pitch me on SuperTank, because if you go to supertank.tv, I'm offering up to over $10,000 to potential companies, business ideas that would love to have me as a minority partner. And so now I can say that, but we haven't gotten there yet. So I'm not adding investor or angel investor.
Okay, get comfortable with it. Comfortable with it.
Well, I'm comfortable. I'll be comfortable with it, but I'm not going to add that yet because I haven't actually accomplished it yet. My hope is that in 2 to 3, 4, 5 months, I will at least have one business under my belt. Then I'll be like, oh yeah, no, totally. Like, let's go, and we'll start the clock again.
Yeah, on
the 10,000, and it adds every month. I'm putting some of the ad revenue from this channel into that pool. So
amazing.
So it's already up to 10,160, and by next, the end of February, it'll be a little bit higher. But anyway, I think that it's really tough for somebody to say that unless, again, you're willing to actually put that kind of money up. And I also think that when it comes to the product and what the market will bear for it, I mean, it's to me, it comes down to like, how big of a problem are you solving? I mean, if you got the thing that like, hey, I got this soap and it's soap, but it'll erase 20, wind the clock back 20 years on your face with just like 3 applications.
Yeah.
20 minutes later, you're looking 20 years younger. Like, it's worth more than a $4, $5, $8, $10 bar of soap.
Yeah. So, I mean, people like to focus on our soap, but the soap is just one thing that we make. And ultimately we're not going to be a soap brand. I mean, the soap is part of our brand moat.
Mm.
Our shape it's customized. It's, I drew it by hand. I had a custom mold made. There's a reason that all bar soap is square because it's all made with the same machinery.
Mhm.
And so I drew this to match, the brand, which is the cactus. It has cactus in it. But it's just one of the things we make. We're working on, a lot of new products still in the bath and body category. And the problem is not, just about the efficacy of the product. It's also just about the problem that your brand solves in the market, because, for example, I don't think that my brand could have been as successful 10 years ago. I don't think the market was ready, but now we're living in this time, in this moment in history right now, you and I together, where retailers are waking up, right? This is like, Black Lives Matter has happened. It's still happening. Like retailers are waking up and they're going, you know what? Our shelves are not representative of who actually shops here and who actually spends money in this category, who over indexes in this category. And we have just been, conditioned, like everything luxury in this country is European. And somehow we just accept that, but it's like, how many French people actually live in this country, Joe? And how many versus how many Latinos, it's a
How
joke.
many French people live in France? Because I know that's been a problem, like going back, like getting close to 20 years now, where it's like, hey, the French population is actually being dominated by other ethnicities in France that there might not be French people, and their birth rate is dropped. I think
Dropping.
dropping or dropped below that threshold of like there's no like they're not all going to disappear tomorrow, but
Mhm.
we're not looking at a good. It's not good. It's not looking good.
Yeah, it's not looking good for them, right? I mean, good
Yeah,
for
for
who,
long
So
term, I don't know, heritage, French
yeah,
heritage or French, I don't know,
right.
culture long
Yeah.
term.
Yeah. So that's also that, right? It's like the opportunity is like in this moment in history where, you know, everyone is realizing, wow, the fastest growing community in this country is a Latino community. And yet, like, retail is behind. They're behind. So when I go to store shelves, I mean, that's how the idea came to me, because I was working in sales for other CPG brands and I was going in stores a lot for other brands and just seeing like, wow, so we have Shea Moisture. Okay, great. We have, this like plenty of soap from the south of France, okay, on store shelves, and just other products, and so that it's really like we're disrupting that space and creating, an entire community, allowing them to be able to be seen and like celebrating our culture very like loudly and proudly, because again, that's where we are in this moment in history, and I don't think we're going back.
Yeah, no, I don't think we should. I think it's, I was watching a video, a little off topic, but watching a video of one of the tech tubers I watch, which is Linus Tech Tips, is shout out to lttstore.com. And he did a video reacting to old technology ads. And some of the ads, even from like 2013 to 2015, were like, "Wow, I can't believe they did that and got away with it, and weren't lambasted." And it's like just like a year, 2 years, when you start talking like getting into the Me Too movement forward, it's like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, no, there's a reason why these ads aren't on their YouTube channels anymore, but they had them,
Exactly.
you know.
Exactly.
Yeah. So life has changed hard and fast. And with that said, like fast change still takes like a decade, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it just does, because generations of people have to, move through this, and they have to get accustomed to it and resist it. And eventually,
Mhm.
they'll just be like, oh, wasn't it always this way? I
Yeah.
think it was,
Yeah.
but it takes, 5, 10, 15
Mhm.
years for that adjustment period to set in. Because people don't just like reprogram themselves to like
Old habits die hard.
overnight. They
Yeah.
do, right? And yeah, so I think it's great that having other ethnicities and other heritages and cultures represented on store shelves, I think is really cool and important for to have more opportunity, because I also think it's great for the youth to be able to look. I mean, we see that with celebrities and stuff like that, especially African Americans. Like this week we got the Super Bowl, right? I'm not
Mhm.
not
Yeah.
just saying it for the sake, but with having two black quarterbacks, it's like, wow, like look, they have an example to look, not just one but two examples at the pinnacle of their game to look up to, and I think
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I think it's absolutely important. I think what you're doing really matters more than just the cosmetic side, just
Yeah,
for cosmetics purposes.
absolutely.
So, with all that said, walking down the hall of Shark Tank, how were you feeling in that moment?
The good thing is that I am a former professional musician. So that really served me because, even when we did like rehearsals or, like some of the other contestants were like, wow, you're so like confident. And I'm like, it's because I've been on stage for 15 years. I was a lead singer of a Latin alternative band. So, give me the mic and I'll lead the room. And so I have that to my benefit. And then it's a lot of hurry up and wait there. It's like you wake up early, you get makeup and hair, and like you're waiting in the green room. And then, all of a sudden it's just like, okay, it's your time. And so I really did a lot of just inner work. I literally called upon both my father's side, my mother's side, like all of my ancestors, like, listen, this is our moment. This is for all of us. I'm just the vessel. I'm going to walk in with full pride because that is what my brand is about. And I honestly felt like first of all, I have to also say, like, there's so much that happens in the tank that you don't see, right? Like it gets edited out to like 8 minutes and you're in there for like 40, right? So I really felt that the sharks actually could feel like the pride that I walked in with. And that's why I feel like they were actually respectful. And when they bowed out, they were like, I'm going to want too much. Like for that reason, it's not going to be good for you. And for that reason, I'm out. And that's why I was like, thank you so much. That's so respectful because that what you're going to ask for me is like actually not good for me. So thank you for removing yourself. And so I literally just did exercises of like, this is not about me. I'm here to represent. I'm here to represent like, my father used to pick fruit. My mother came from Mexico, did not speak English when she arrived when she was 20 years old. My grandparents like were laborers, and so the fact that I'm here now, I'm like, I'm going to bring it. Like I'm here to stand in my full worth. And that's what I did.
No, and you absolutely did. It's incredible that I love that when all of your experience brings you to that moment. That's
Yeah.
like when you were singing. And what is a Latin alternative band? Is it like punk rock in Latin or
It can be. It
or in
can be.
Spanish?
It
Oh,
can be.
okay.
Yeah. So there's definitely like punk rock, Latin alternative bands. Mine was more like rock. It was like bass guitar, drums. I play electric guitar, so it was bass guitar, drums. But instead of a lead guitar, there was accordion, and it was like rock. Music meets like cumbia, which is like the dance music of. It's technically Colombian, but it's very popular in Mexico, and so it was dance music, but with a rock attitude. Because I grew up in San Diego. I grew up listening to like Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, but also my parents' music because that's what happens when you're from the border. So it was really that mix. So that's, yeah, Latin alternative is like, you can look at the Latin Grammys and see anyone that's like a rock band, is considered Latin alternative because I guess it's not
Ah.
traditional music. That's really why it's alternative.
Okay. All right. So, well, well, then that's not like, is that any Latin rock music at that point, or is it? Because like we
It,
have like the classic rock, and then
yeah,
there's hard
yeah,
rock. Like there's all these
yeah,
different things, but they're
yeah,
all rock, and then there's alternative, which is
yeah,
a form of rock, but like it's really
yeah.
its own like just main genre, I guess.
Yeah, so I definitely wouldn't consider like there's like Mana is a group in Mexico that's kind of considered the Mexican Bon Jovi. So I would not consider them
Oh,
Latin alternative because it's very mainstream. It's like how Bon Jovi is here, right? It's like in every bar, karaoke.
you're
But
speaking my
yeah, so
Jersey
it's
language here. I appreciate it.
but like the newer bands, right? So they would be kind of fall under Latin alternative. But I think that that's like an American term. I think that if you go to those countries, they don't call themselves Latin alternative, right? That's just like a genre name that's been put on them here when they come and tour here. And there's like a
Hmm.
Latin alternative music conference here. It was like a scene.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, yeah, no. So anyway, get back to what I was saying. The opportunity to have all these experiences, and we don't know when we're going through those experiences how it's going to play out later on,
Yes,
how that
exactly.
applies. And that's why I think it's so important to get different aspects and different perspectives and stories and experiences that we just like, maybe we do it and then we put it on the shelf and then we wait around and then it's like, oh, we take that off and it's like we don't even
Yes.
realize that we're calling sometimes to those things
Yes.
that are going to enable us to be able to walk down the hall at Shark
Do the
Tank
next thing. Yeah,
and do it,
exactly. I
right?
100% agree.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. So okay, so speaking to the Sharks, speaking to the fact that they didn't quite love the valuation and felt respectful enough to want to say, I don't want to like insult you. I don't
Mhm.
want, to come off as because I also think that part of it, I wonder if part of it, because I've seen this a couple of times when it's ethnic based, whatever the product or whatever it is, like it would be insulting for them to be like, yeah, I'll take 45%, and it's like coming from Kevin. Oh, and I need $1 a bar while we're at it.
Yeah.
And it's like, but then it's like it's not a Latin company at that
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
like. I mean, I don't know how much percentage you owned at that point, but like
Oh,
40%,
yeah.
or you
Yeah.
owned 100% at that
Yeah.
point still?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but if you were raised, it doesn't leave you much room to raise unless they're willing to sell their shares
Mhm.
without you
Mhm.
saying, well, we're not
Mhm.
Latin owned.
Yeah.
We're just, you know,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
might
And
as
I
well be
think
like the P&G or whatever. Like, just,
exactly.
yeah, we made the thing, but we're not actually of that heritage or that background or
Yeah,
anything.
exactly. Exactly. And that's why, Joe, I think what most what I think the general population of, of Americans that are watching the show, they don't really understand what 30% of your company really means in the bigger picture, right? Because you think 30%, oh my God, that's not that much. There's still all this other percentage left, but it's like, no, that's not how it works. Because if you're really trying to grow and scale a brand to like become a global brand, you're not just going to raise once. This is like the first time. And then the next time, what? Someone's going to want 30%. Like, and then to your point, you're no longer a majority shareholder, like, owner of your own company that you built. And it's owned by other people who can kick you out of your own company, which has happened many times. So and to your point, also that, right? Like, this is still a Latina owned company. The investor that I ended up taking on is a Latino fund. They are
Ah.
Latinos, and their whole fund is to fuel the Latino economy. And so it's still a Latino owned company, even though I have a lead investor who wrote me a much larger check than any of the Sharks were willing to do.
I think in this current I don't know if climate's the right word, but I
Mhm.
think in this age, I think it's important that like because story matters so much. I
Yeah.
think it like again, I think like having like, oh well, Kevin owns Kevin O'Leary owns like 50% or 40% of it. It's like but he's not Latino, and it's like it's almost like disingenuous, which kind of tarnishes the story. Even though you would absolutely like push the story as hard as possible, kind of like the Tom story. There's no guy named Tom,
Yeah. Yeah.
and there's it's just like not really the
Yeah.
really real story.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah, exactly. And people care about that now. Like, to your point, like, people ask us still, like, is this owned by Latinos? And I'm like, can you go to our website and read the bio? Do you see my name? My name is Sandra Lila Velasquez. Like, do you want to see like my birth certificate? Do you want to see my parents' birth certificates? Because people want to support like an authentic brand. Like, that's the age we live in. We live in this transparent age. When we were children, we didn't know who made our products. You didn't know who made your cereal, nor did you care. You
Yep.
know what I mean? You
As
didn't
long
know
as it's
who
got
made your
marshmallows in it.
shoes. Yeah, exactly. You didn't know who made your shoes, and now people do care, right? We do care about where things come from, who is behind them, and I, as a consumer, also care. Like, if I can't find the founder of a brand that I'm supporting, it's like kind of weirds me out. I'm like, who owns this brand? Like, there's nothing on the website anywhere that tells me who owns this. Not that every founder has to be forward facing and on Instagram live. Do you know what I mean? But still, like, you want to know like who is behind this, because we understand that our dollars matter, that we can vote with our dollars and where we spend our money. Like, that's the world we live in now.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I don't think anybody's asking of the big, Johnson and Johnson, the Fortune 500 companies to like, where I think it's important that those CEOs do put themselves out there and, say good things and do good things. But I don't think it's as important. Like, I couldn't tell you, like, IBM CEO, like,
Me
I
neither.
couldn't tell you, right? So,
Yeah.
but I'd still, well, I don't buy anything from IBM,
I know. I was like,
like
I'm a Mac person, so I don't really. That's
yeah,
why I don't know.
I mean, me too. I mean, I'm on a PC right now, but I'm both. I
Yeah.
use MacBooks because they're the best laptops, hands down. But I think as anybody that's not in that Fortune 500, Fortune 500, or Fortune, yeah, I thought I said Fortune 100, Fortune 100, 500
Yeah.
talk. I think it's important for those stories to be part of the marketing. I mean, we see so many aspects of things utilized for marketing that is purely for marketing, but
Hmm. Hmm.
it might do good, but it's like, yeah, but we all know that you did this for the marketing, right?
Yeah, or
and
that
and
it's
that's
just
part
not
of it.
authentic. It's not authentic, right? And that's the other thing, Joe, is like when I had the idea for this brand, it felt like a calling. It really felt like a lightning bolt. Like I did not doubt whether I should start this brand. And when I started this brand, by the way, I was 43 years old and unemployed, and I had no savings. So like starting this brand was not because like I had money lying around. It was really my way out of building a better life for myself and for my child. And so, when I had the idea, I was like, I have to do this because if I don't do it, Procter and Gamble is going to come and do it poorly and it's going to be inauthentic. And because that does happen, right? And that's why people ask me like, or they reach out, even some of my retailers, like when they first discovered the brand, they were like, the first thing we did was go to your website to see like who owned this brand to make sure that it wasn't cultural appropriation because there is so much of that. And that's why it's so important for us to be exactly who we are and like own this. And so, you know, it's real.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's great that we have people waking up to that. To that idea that like I need to do a little more research about a lot of the things that I'm buying, using, especially things that we put in our body, on our body. Those are maybe a little bit more important than like who made this like laser thermometer. I,
I have that one, by the way.
oh, you do? Oh, yeah. It's
Yeah.
like $20 on Amazon or something,
Yeah.
right?
I
Like,
use it when
yeah.
I was making my own products. That was my temperature thermometer.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, it works great. I use it. I've used it for a lot of different things.
I was
That's
like, "Oh, are
great.
you making soap over there, Joe?" Okay.
No, I am not. No, I'm not. That's all I can think is Fight Club at that point. So, so speaking of Fight Club, it seemed like Damon took some issue with how you chose to counter
Yeah.
by offering the same valuation of
Yeah.
$6 million when you came up
Yeah.
with 600,000 for 10%.
Yeah. And I just had to smile because first of all, let's not forget this is a television show. There has to be an entertainment value, otherwise it's boring. Who wants to watch that? And so, I think it's great that he had that reaction. It was funny. And I personally took no offense to anything. So for me, it was like, okay, I love that Damon wants to like mansplain how the show works to me. Let me tell you how the show works. Okay. First you come in and then we counter, and then you counter. So, it's fine. People can say whatever they want to say. And ultimately, like, I'm bringing the opportunity to you. And I think that is the thing that, was like the kind of the takeaway is like, I think people expect for us to go in there groveling, like we're so desperate for $100,000. And don't get me wrong, $100,000 would change my life. Whose life would it not change, right? But when you know that you're building something that's extremely valuable, like you have to recognize your own worth in that moment and realize that you are presenting an opportunity to the investor, because there's plenty of money in the world. And this is also what I learned through fundraising is that there is so much money in the world, Joe. There's so much money. The people have so much money that they don't know where to put it, that they're like, hey, Joe, what's the deal flow? What do you got? Do you know any companies where I can like put this money to help to make it grow? So it's not just sitting there, like in your brokerage account or whatever. And so not all money is good. Just because someone says, hey, I'm going to give you $300,000, but I want 30%, that doesn't mean it's good. That doesn't mean it's the right choice. And again, going back to my earlier point, 30% is a huge amount of a company to take in an early stage, and they know that. Daniel knows that. He bought back his own company from his, from like his first investor. Like if you read his story, he actually ended up buying back his company, their shares, and then it rose, like the valuation, then it was like worth 2 billion. So it's not always a good idea to, even in the moment, if you feel desperate, if you know that you can do better, wait.
Yeah, and we talk. I mean, I talk about this a lot on the show. About how it's like, well, like $100,000 is still a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things,
dude,
like
that's like a purchase order.
Get it. Well, right. Well, yeah, probably a kind of small purchase order depending on how big of a thing you're shipping to. But I mean, you could get that. Like you can get loans, right?
Yes.
Like there's ways to get that money.
Yes.
I mean, now when you start talking about 3, 4, 500,000, that's a different conversation. But 100,000 to 200,000, like there's definitely ways that sometimes they're not the best ways to be getting money. Wouldn't always recommend it, but it's not impossible to get that money.
Yeah.
It's not, and the other aspect of it is, when you're talking about like 100,000, like you could pay back 100,000, right? Like it would take a while, but like if everything failed and you had to go get a job, you could pay it back. It's not some unfathomable amount, like, oh, it's $1 million where it's like, woo, you're gonna have to work like 8 jobs, like nonstop around the clock to be able to pay that back if everything went to crap.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing too, is, I think the general population that's watching, they're like, wow, $100,000 is like so much money. It's more money than people make in a year. But when you're running a business where there is tax, insurance, product insurance, rent, employees, health benefits, like it's not that much money. It's just not, and not to mention if you're a product-based business and you have inventory like we do, that's literally like a purchase order, and then what? So great. Now I just sold 30% of my company and I've gotten one purchase order out of it, then what?
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of times we'll see like, oh, can you give us a line of credit or you fund the POs for us going forward. And those types of things get weaved into the deals because they know they're going to have to go somewhere else for the money the sharks know that, right? And the sharks don't want to necessarily have their deals flounder, right? Like, oh, I gave this guy or girl $200,000, $300,000, and now the business is facing bankruptcy because we can't fund a PO. Well, that means my money's just going down the toilet. Like I might as well just did a bonfire in the backyard with a whole bunch of cash.
Exactly.
It's the same effect.
Yeah.
It's funny that I feel like Damon Mansplaining should have been the title of my video. I missed that. It didn't even occur to me at the time that that's what he was doing without him realizing, probably even him realizing it, especially considering he was already out at the time. Like,
yeah. It's like, well, you have more to say? Okay.
Yeah, that's not great. But maybe I'll go and change that title to Damon. Well, I got the video up here, so maybe I'll take a look and see. But so you wind up not getting a deal. Daniel was basically the lifeline, though Kevin was still in, I guess, at the end because he was like, oh, and I'm out. Like,
yeah. Technically, it was Kevin, who made the first offer, and then Daniel came back in to counter. So there were technically 2 deals on the table at that time, and then I just declined both of them. And then they both also responded with saying they're out. But I was like, I just told you were out, so you don't need to say that again.
So you're leaving the tank. How are you feeling as empowered as you seemed leaving? Because it's funny you mentioned the mansplaining thing because then it went to Mark talking instead of to you talking.
Yeah, Mark. I love Mark's. Mark he's so funny, right? Where he kind of like cheers for people when they say no, like good for them. Like he does that a lot, and he said that when I walked out of the tank as well, like good, hell yeah, good for her. I was feeling empowered, but it's also it's still scary, right? And like fundraising and asking for money is just nerve-wracking, at least when you're doing it for the first time. Which, so for me, like, this was the first time I actually fundraised. This was our Series Seed that I closed, just a few months after filming Shark Tank. And it's still nerve-wracking when you're like, oh my God, I just, like, someone was going to give me money and I said no, because I just had to believe that more, like, a better opportunity was going to come, and it did. So I think because I'm just older, like, I'm not 23, like, I'm 46. So like, I've been on earth for a minute, and I just know that the only regrets I have in life are when I settled. If I look back and you're like, hey, Sandra, what are your regrets in life so far? I'm like, I don't regret, this, that. The only times I regret are like when I undervalued myself and when I settled, when I knew that I deserve better. And that includes some marriages that I've been in. Okay. So those are the moments. And so that's why now I'm able to be like, you know what? I just know that there's more. And I think a lot of us operate from the fear that we think if we don't take what's given to us in front of us, that there's not more on the other side. And what I really, showed to myself and to the community is that there is. In my case, there was $2.7 million for a lot less equity, on the other side. And so that's really, in that moment, right, that you have on the screen that you captured, is like, I'm like really just trusting my gut. That's the feeling that I'm having. Like, I just know that there's something better.
Ding ding. That absolutely. I'm a strong believer in everything happens for a reason, and we don't always get to see how, like we said earlier, like the experiences and the things that we do. We don't want, might not reveal them to ourselves, like what that is going to help us accomplish in the future. But you just got to stay in the game, right, and keep pushing forward.
Yes, and there's always more. I think that's the thing, right? Is you'll never know if you just settle and you're like, well, this is fine where I am right now. I'll just stop here. That's not how you grow. You can choose like comfort, or you can choose growth. You can't have both.
Yeah. No, 100%. You 100%. You can't have both at the same time.
Yeah, growth is scary. It's like, it takes courage. Like, so that was one of the most courageous things I've ever done, is like walking in there and then saying no, because I was open to whatever was going to happen, because I have seen them do deals of 5%, 8%, right? So I had my ceiling in mind. Yeah. So I was like, this is very possible. They're going to say they'll agree, but when the starting point is 30%, I'm like, okay, we're so far apart here, like we are not going to see eye to eye. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, you definitely weren't. And as my great grandfather always said, a hard deal is a bad deal, and it would have been bad for you, like to go and say, okay, yeah, I'll do the 30%, and then, I mean, odds are you probably would have backed out of it, because that when after the cameras were off, like, because that wasn't what you had in mind, and that wasn't where you were at that time. And I think, one of the things that I get a question a lot in the comments in the super community is like, I want to start a business, but I don't really have much to start with, or I'm not really anywhere. And I'm like, that's actually great, because that means you don't have a bunch of bills you have to like account for or atone for every single month, right? Like, you don't have the big car payment, the big house payment, the this, that, the third. Like, you have the basics that you have. So it's like, if you fail, you didn't move. Like, you didn't go from being up here to being down here. You stayed here, and you gained a bunch of experience and a bunch of things that you wouldn't have gained otherwise, right? And experience and experiences, opportunities that you wouldn't necessarily have otherwise. So in a lot of ways, I think it's easier to start with less and get to that, not ignore the MVP, get to something where it's like, hey, yeah, I make this, I sell this at this place, and yeah, I'm making a couple dollar profit here and there, and we just keep rolling and rolling and rolling it, and I don't have these big expenses that, like, it's the person that's got the middle, middle America to upper middle class job, that's like, well, I got, the 2 3 kids, the house, the cars, the this, that, and they're like, they can't take a risk.
Mm-hmm,
They
mm-hmm.
they got people counting on them,
Yeah.
like,
Mm-hmm.
and themselves, and they're comfortable, and to speak to the comfort versus
Yes.
growth, right?
That's the
Like,
part. That part, Joe. That part. They're comfortable. They're
yeah,
comfortable, right? So it's like it's like courage or comfort. Choose. Choose one.
yeah. And what's courage for one person is not necessarily, it
Oh
does not
yeah.
equal what courage is for somebody else or somebody
Yeah.
else's position. And
Yeah.
and this isn't me saying that one way is better than the other, but
Absolutely not.
I think because I remember somebody once said, like, oh, well, is the power of dreaming like going to pay my mortgage? And I'm like, well,
It might.
you took the mortgage, right, in the first place, so like you set yourself in that position.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only so much you're going to be able to do, because you're already allotting so much money
Mm-hmm.
to that. And
Yes.
and it, like I said, it's important that you be able to take care of your family, and provide and all that. But at the same time, like, that puts you in a position that it makes it that much harder to like go
Mm-hmm.
and have that courage to go for that growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And people make choices, and not everyone needs to be an entrepreneur. Not everyone needs
No,
to do what
no.
I'm doing. Not everyone needs to go to formulation school and risk everything. It's not for everybody, but if you are called to do this, everything starts with an idea. So when people come to me, because I also like mentor other founders, and they want to understand, like, how did I build this? How did I do this with no money? How did I do this by myself in the beginning? And everything starts with an idea, and everything starts with intention. And I read something the other day, like online, that is just so brilliant. I wish I could remember who said it, but like, we all know what ADD is, like attention deficit disorder, but but what about intention deficit disorder?
Mm.
And this concept of, like, you have to first, like, your brain is the GPS of your life. And if you don't tell it where to go, it's not going to take you there by itself. Like, you don't just get into your car, Joe, and like hope that you arrive to where you want to go. Hope that you get to the Eagles game, right? You put the address in there. You say, take me to the Eagles game. And so it's the same, right? So I put into my GPS, like, I want to build this. This is where this product is going to live. This is who it's going to serve. And this is why it needs to exist. And like this. And so then I worked backwards, right? So it was very intentional. And that's how I got here. I had no money to start with, right? And so you can, like, again, not everybody wants to make soap in their house. I get it, but it's really about the intention. And there's just been so many examples of people that have created things from nothing. And we're not the anomalies. We're not flukes. We are just the people that decided and declared and had the intention to move forward and moved out of our comfort zone, because, you can stay where you are, or you can decide to grow. That's it.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. So, once you get back from being on Shark Tank, how did you prepare for potentially being aired on Shark Tank?
There's literally, you just bite your nails, Joe. There's like nothing that you can do, And so they were like, don't call us. We'll call you. We'll let you know. And I knew that the season was going to start in September. So I was like, great. Like, it'd be so awesome if it would air in Q4, because that'd be great, like for the holidays. And then crickets. And I was like, oh my God. Okay, please air, please air, please air. And then finally, like right at the new year, because they only give you 3 weeks notice, which is kind of crazy when you're a product brand, because inventory takes a lot longer than 3-week lead times. So you have to also prepare, assuming that it is going to happen. Like, and that's also scary, because now you're fronting money for inventory for like a boom that you hope is going to happen, and it still might not. So we prepared, we had the inventory ready. We had the systems ready, back to our earlier point, SMS setup, email flows, the warehouse was ready. Everyone was ready. And then finally, like on like the day after New Year's, they were like, congratulations, your episode is scheduled to air, on January 20th. And they still have to put a disclaimer, Joe, but by the way, your episode still might not air. And I'm like, oh my God, when do we get to like relax? Like, can we tell people like, what is this? Congratulations, but hey, FYI, you still might not air. So it's still nerve wracking up until the moment that it happens. And I think they just have to allow for that, because what if I go to jail? What if what if I storm the Capitol? What if I am a bad person? Right. They're going to yank my episode. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well,
So
they when Ukraine got invaded, they did a special that week, so they didn't air an episode, and then they aired it at a later date. So yeah, anything can anything can happen.
anything can happen. Acts of God can happen, right? So so it's not until like I see myself on the television where I'm like, okay, it's happening. Okay. And luckily everything's in place, and and then it was great. We obviously, like everyone else, I don't think we did as good as the pancake guy. Like, he killed it. The long table, the guy with the pancakes, right? He did like almost $1 million in like 2 weeks.
Really? I haven't.
Yes.
I think I recently was just in contact with him about potentially coming on the show. So hopefully,
Yes.
what's his name? His name John.
I don't remember his
Jim?
name.
I'm bad with
But anyway, Long Table
too.
is the brand, and
Yes.
and he went live on Instagram. That's how I know, because he posted. He was like, "Hey guys, here we are. It's like been 2 weeks, and we're like at like $750,000 in sales."
Woo!
Yeah. So amazing. So happy for him, because I know he was a small brand. He was only like in 20 stores, and obviously he sold out. Like, he was not prepared for that. Everyone is hoping that it's gonna do great, but it also just depends on the product. You know what I mean? How it resonates with consumers. So we did well. It was great. Like, our business like grew like 500%. Yeah.
I mean, that's the tough thing, right? Is knowing whether or not how much inventory to build up for and to sit on. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess, in some cases, I mean, if you don't have a ton of SKUs, it's not the end of the world, because like you'll sell it eventually, and
Yeah.
and all that, but it still ties up a lot of money
Yeah.
and space, that you might not necessarily always have access to. So yeah, I know that it can be pretty nerve-wracking. Did you do a watch party for it?
I kind of I did a mini one. Like, one of my team members came over who lives in New York, and then another friend of mine from the neighborhood came over. But I was just so like anxious and nervous. I was like, I can't be around 1 million people. Like, everyone else, my friends had their own watch parties, and they send me pictures, and I was like, thank you. But I was like, I just need to sit here with my margarita with 2 people on my couch and like get through this moment. So I didn't personally host a big watch party, but other people, we did like a red carpet, like pre-game Instagram live, like just, preparing people, like half an hour before. But for the actual viewing event, I kept it super small.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely could see that, because like I feel like I would want to be, like, as much as I would love to have everybody around me, I also would be very nervous about my website, wanting to answer emails and and chats and things like that coming through, DMs and all, and be involved there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was so fun to watch, the live view in Shopify, to watch like the minute the doors open and I'm not even in the tank. The minute the doors open and they say your name, like, it was like boom, like thousands of people were on the website live. Like, the whole eastern seaboard like lit up, because it airs on the East Coast first. So it was like everything west of the Mississippi was just like blue, just people like on the website. So that was super cool to witness.
And how did you wind up coming across my video?
I think someone sent me a link, like, oh, your episode. I think my dad sent me a link, like, oh, your episode is up on YouTube. And I was like, oh, ABC posted the link already? Wow, that's fast. And then I was like, oh no, it's Joe. It's not ABC. Because I had used, I had gone to your channel to see like past episodes of people, to just study what the sharks were asking people. Because not everyone's episode is like on the ABC channel. Sometimes it's only on yours. So that's how I got alerted.
Oh, okay. Well, that's funny that your dad reached out.
Yeah.
But I see that with the search results, right? And that's why, like, I try to do the videos the night that they air, and not even like with, since your pitch was first, to do your pitch, ideally before the episode's done airing on the
Mm.
East Coast, because there's
Hmm.
that many people that are searching. Once it gets to the West Coast, there's not nearly as many people
Yeah.
searching.
Yeah.
But it's still like as close to that as I can possibly get the video up. That's always the goal. Like, get
Yeah.
that first pitch up, get the second pitch up as quick as possible behind it.
Yeah.
So before it's on the West Coast, everything is already up. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you can see the search how you go like google.com/trends, and you can see like,
Yeah.
it's pegged to the ceiling there. But I'm glad that you got to use the channel for to
Research.
prepare and all that. Yeah,
Yeah.
research.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like, okay, let me think of all the questions that they're going to ask. And of course, as you saw in the episode, there has to be one question where there's like a gotcha moment, right? Where I was like, I memorized every single number except for the net profit. Damn, and so that was the moment where it was like dun 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 dun, where it's super dramatic. And of course and I knew like that there was going to have to be some moment of tension like that, because otherwise, again, it's not interesting television to watch. And I knew from my experience in the tank, I was like, there was only 2 moments in my entire time in the tank where there could be potential, like, these like gotcha moments that they were going to like zoom in on. And so I already knew what they were, because there were really only 2, and they chose that one. So so that didn't catch me off guard.
I'm surprised more people don't come into the tank with like a piece of paper, like was it the
You're
chicken
not
coop
allowed.
guy? You're not allowed. Didn't the chicken coop guy come in with a piece of paper?
Oh my God, I don't think so. Did he?
I feel like it was him that had it like tucked in his like shirt
Oh,
pocket, and he pulled it out to like answer. But that makes sense that you're not allowed and why people don't, because I mean it doesn't make for great TV to be like,
no.
hold on,
Let
pull
me
out
get
this
out my
road map, and
spreadsheet.
you're, like,
Yeah.
unfolding the thing. Okay, what is it you want to know? Or
Exactly.
I should say, like, what is it that you want
Yeah.
to know?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Sandra, thank you so much for being here. What does the future of Nopalera look like?
Yeah, I mean, now we have raised funds. So now I have a team of 9. I have 9 people on payroll. The fact that I can provide, benefits and 401ks to people, I'm still like, my mind is blown, right?
I love
Because
it.
I used to barely survive. I used to make $40,000 a year in New York, which is like not survivable. And so I have a team now. We have hundreds of retailers, and so really now that with the team in place, we're able to service them better. Doing some like in-store activations, which is super fun. And in R&D, like I'm the head of product. I'm the head of R&D, so deep into new product formulations, releasing some new products this year, and in talks with like some big retailers, that hopefully we will land either at the end of this year, or like they'll say yes this year and then it'll happen next year, because they have long lead times. So that's really kind of the next stage of just building like, our national business before we go overseas, before we become a global brand and we take it to, to Europe and such.
Take it to take it to the beaches of Normandy.
Okay, we're gonna go straight to France first.
yes. So again, thank you so much for being here. Can you let everybody know how they can get their hands on Nopalera?
Yes. So Nopalera, you can go to our website, nopalera.co, so not .com, but .co. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on TikTok. We have, like over 100,000 followers, between the two. And then, we are at Nordstrom.com. We're at CredoBeauty.com, Free People. And then we're in like 400 boutiques across the country. So I can't redo that list because I can't even keep track of them. You'll just have to hopefully find them in your city. But literally we're in boutiques in all like 42 states, like everywhere except for the Dakotas. So a lot of really cute lifestyle stores around the country. So yeah, that's how you can find us.
Phenomenal. It's so awesome to see your progress and see how everything has just exploded for you. I love that you love the fact that you're able to provide for 9 people and their families. Like that is
so amazing.
I mean, that's what we do. What this is all about. Being able to help other people, not just the customers, but the team as well.
The team
right?
is so amazing. It's a great feeling.
It always absolutely is. So, Sandra, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I greatly appreciate it. I'd love to follow up with you at some point and see what you got going on.
Yeah, let's do like a where is she now in like a year and see
Yes,
how far I've gone.
absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. Thanks for all the work that you do to, to elevate our stories and share our stories with other entrepreneurs. And I hope that this is also valuable for other people that are building businesses, because entrepreneurship is lonely, as you know, and it's good to just know that there's other people that are going through it with you.
1000%. You are not alone. The super community is here to help answer questions, do whatever it is that you need for support to get where you want. And that's why it's like one of the main reasons I do all this.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you making it all the way to the end. If you haven't watched Sandra's pitch, go click up here. If not, I'll see you in the video down below. Take care and go be super.